Good vibes. Got the energy. You're listening to Hope 103.1 FM Grenada. Hope 103.1 FM.
Chosen generation, we've been called for to show His excellence. All I require for life, God has given me, and I know who I am. We are a chosen generation, we've been called for to show His excellence.
Wonderful Wednesday afternoon. To all you wonderful listeners locked on to Hope 103.1 FM. It's a beautiful Wednesday evening.
What He says I am, where He says I'm at, I know who I am.
And we are here for another session of Leadership Plus.
What He says I am, where He says I'm at, I know.
We thank God for these sessions. We thank God for Reverend John who have taken the initiative.
I live a life of favor, for I know who I am. I'm working in power, I'm working.
You know, he's a busy man who wears many hats, but we thank him so much for coming here each Wednesday to share with us on important aspects and topics in leadership. In fact, one of our listeners sent in a commendation. It's like having our own John Maxwell, only a little better.
Oh, man, there's no way. Yes.
John, how are you today?
Great. Thank you, sir. It's good to be able to come back and to continue this series on Leadership Plus. It's a great time to talk about our subject today. I believe it's perhaps one of the most significant subjects in terms of how we address the leader's time. Tock, manage the clock.
Yes, indeed. And I'm looking forward to today's discussion. As you just rightfully said, it's one of the most important topics, or a topic of great significance, you know, for each man alive has it. And as you said, it's deemed one of the greatest needs of our leaders. So we are talking about time. And scientists say that time is not something that we can see or touch, but we can measure its passage. And of course, as we said earlier, the theme that guides our talk for today is the leader's time. Tick, tock, manage the clock. How to steward the time and manage opportunities. You know, Miles Monroe says this about time. He said, time is life, and life is the time as time. He says that life is a measure in time. And he also said that whatsoever you invest your time in, you become. And additionally, John Maxwell has this to say about time. And I quote, he said, you will never change your life until you change something you do daily. The secret to your success is found in your daily routine. End of quote. Reverend John, as a leader, can you talk to us on the importance of using time wisely? Or can you give us an example, probably from your life, how you would have been a good steward of your time and you would have seen the success that you set out to see?
Well, I'll probably make a statement to begin our time that a person who doesn't manage the leader's time really cannot manage others, because we believe that it is a significant and most important ingredient and characteristic that should be part of a leader's life. All of us are given the same amount of time, and how do we manage the clock, as it were? As a matter of fact, time management is really self-management, because time is neutral, whether you are the president or whether you are the prime minister or whether you just an ordinary person. We all have the same hours in the day, and how do we utilize those hours will determine the kind of leader that you are going to be and the kind of leader that you portray as an example to others as well.
Right. So we're going to jump right into today's discussion, and we're going to look at the basic facts on time management.
Great. So leaders around the world agree one of the greatest needs of their life is more time.
Mm-hmm.
Most admit that they don't manage their time as wisely as they should. Leaders are inundated with opportunities and activities and frequently end up merely reacting to life instead of leading from a sense of purpose. So the basic facts, and there are about 7 of them that we will talk about, and just remind our listeners and viewers that the resource from which we gain our content is part of the program that the John Maxwell team provided through the EQUIP program. And we have done this training in Grenada and elsewhere across the Caribbean, helping other leaders in these aspects and discussions of how do we lead. So today, we have to admit, the first thing is an admission that we all waste time. We all do not maximize the use of time that given to us on a particular day. And so there's an acknowledgement that we all waste time. Secondly, we cannot change time. Time is something that is constant, is consistent, whether it's a rainy day or it's a sunny day or there's a storm. It continues to be the same number of hours in the particular day. Thirdly, we must accept the fact that time is the most important resource to mankind. Because time, whether you're living in other regions of the world, and time may be different because you're in a different time zone, but you're still given the equal hours in a particular daylight and time and night time as well. It's the most important resource to mankind because it will determine how we use it. We cannot do anything to increase the quantity of time. So we cannot get 25 hours in the day. Some of us would like much more than that. But it's just a standard access to time. And so the only thing that we can do is to steward the time, to manage the time, to utilize the time wisely that God has given to us. As we look at the context of this, the biblical framework, the writer says in Psalm, teach us to number our days, O Lord, that we may apply our hearts with wisdom. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us and establish the work of our hands. Yes, establish the work of our hands. So there is a request of the psalmist to God, teach us to number our days. Each of us are given a particular number of days, a number of years, and we do not have a guarantee of how many years are given to us. The challenge, how do we number those days in what is given to us right now? We can do anything, but we cannot do everything. So that's where the management of time begins. The recognition that we are limited to the number of things we can accomplish in a particular hour or the hours of the day. And so we talked previously about the priorities that we set for our day. How do we lay out a plan, strategize? What is the priorities in number 1, 2, 3, and the rest would follow. And you may have a list, a to-do list. Some of our listeners, viewers may have a to-do list of 15, 20 things sometimes. You may not get all done, but once you prioritize the most important ones. You want to get those done. And then, of course, we accept the fact that we all have the tendency to procrastinate. We do it tomorrow, we'll do it next week. When these things are in a better condition, when people behave better, when your staff, when your workers, when your church members behave a little better, we will handle this matter and fix this problem. So we all have tendency. And so how many people have put off their own personal development and growth in terms of where they want to be? Some have set goals for themselves when they were 25, 35, 40, and then the years just go by so quickly.
Very quickly.
And you realize that the years have gone by, and we want to remember the statement that we are not just counting the days, but we want to make the days count.
Yeah.
So there's something important in every day given to us. At least there should be one significant involvement that makes a contribution only to your life, but also to the lives of others. So there's a renowned management consultant, he since passed, Peter Drucker, said, perhaps nothing else distinguishes effective executives as much as their love and care of time. It is an interesting paradox we have today. Why is it that in primitive societies nobody had a watch, but everybody had time? Yet in today's society, nobody has time, but everybody has a watch. Where does time go when we gain by motivating information faster than we did before? Why is it that we don't have more time with all the technology we've added to our lives? It's simple. We keep adding more information and activity in our lives. Our expectation, productivity has increased, and leaders are exhausted with the pace of our lives. So we have added all these gadgets to our lives, and all the activities have increased. And so there's less productivity, but there is increased activity. And increased activity does not necessarily equate to productivity. So how do we measure our productivity? So there are some timely advice about time. So the first one that is discussed is become time conscious. So be aware of the time. Time conscious leaders are always aware of time and how it is used. They live in light of the big picture, managing each project in view of the total mission they seek to accomplish. And so are you conscious of how you spend a day? When you reflect upon how the day has gone, do I recognize wasted time as well? So there's a little diagram that helps to illustrate that. For example, it says if you have a 70-year lifespan, this is how time is for you. So if you're 20, so we have some young people, young adults listening, it is likened to, it's about just 11 o'clock in the morning. If you're 25, it gets a little later. It's 12:25 p.m. If you're 30, it's 1:25 p.m. If you're 35, it's 2:59 p.m. If you're 40, it's getting late. So it's getting 4:60 and it's end of a working day. If you're 45, it's 5:43. If you're 50, it's getting dark now. It's about 6:50 p.m. If you're 55, it's 8:08 p.m. If you're 60, it's about 10:11 p.m. And if you're 70, it's approaching midnight. So it's a scale.
When I read that that scale, I exclaimed because it's so real. You know,
Right.
that the age, when I looked at my age, I wouldn't disclose my age, but I exclaimed, I'm like, wow, time is so important that we got
Yeah,
to
a little late, yes.
Yeah. Use our time wisely.
Right. So the first insight for us, the advice is to be time conscious where you are when you look at this graph, as it were. um, how it reflects in a daily time frame for you.
Mm.
And secondly, make a personal log for each week. Our days are identical in all this. It's not, our days are not the same, but we all can fit others into our day. It's the hours in a day that are limited. After all, the amount of work we could finish is infinite. So if you log your day, depends on what time your day starts. An average working day starts about 8 o'clock, and you probably work until 5 o'clock.
Mm.
And for some people, those are locked in hours, depends on the kind of work that you do. But it's what you do with the hours before and after that is going to determine what contribution you make and how do you spend that time. Do you keep track of your time? What do you discover when you keep a record? So it is going to be helpful to do that. Otherwise, you'll be asking the question, where has the time gone?
Mm-hmm.
The day has just finished and we haven't accounted for it. There's no understanding of where the hours went and how they were spent. So for a practical standpoint, you have your tablet, you have your phone now, so that you could log in a schedule for a particular time, like you make appointments. And then identify your major time wasters. So there are time wasters. So recommendation, discontinue them, simply remove them from your calendar. So you have to determine who and what wastes your time. And this could mean people that waste a lot of your time, did not have anything to do with their time, and they figure, well, they could just use your time and not only waste your time, but of course, wasting their time as well. Identify someone who is gifted to take on the task. So some tasks that you can delegate. So you're not bogged down with tasks that others can do well or even do better than you as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So the concept here is to maximize the time. So you're not swatting a fly with a 2x4 and making all that effort to do small things that others can do better than you can. And then place a value on each activity. So let's, for example, you determine this particular activity is very important that you must get done today. So that's a number one value that is attached to it. You have to complete a project that you have been working on, and it has to be completed at a particular time. That's a number one value for you. You have to prepare for an exam. You're in studies or you are in higher education. You have to prepare for a class. You're teaching a program. You're a radio broadcaster. Yeah, how do you prepare the programming, of course, and all that takes prep work. And so you add a value to it. In terms, if there is no value added to what you do, very often you can take that activity for granted. It does not seem to be important whether you accomplish or finish this activity. So how do you value a particular, is a meeting important to you? That would it make a difference? Because what we have found as in our leadership training is that meetings can become a most wasted activity if it is not properly run, and those who lead meetings can waste your time as well. I'm sure we have all been to meetings and you ask, why have I come here? What am I doing here? Because it sounds like a routine from the last several weeks that we are just mulling over things that we should have accomplished. And so you can determine what meetings you attend and what meetings you will not attend because they're not productive enough and value your time well enough so that it earns you a contribution to what you've been asked to do. So place a value on a particular activity? Do you know the value of each activity you perform each week? Number 5, be result oriented rather than activity oriented. So you can be involved in a multitude of activities, and people would invite you to sit on a board, to serve on this committee, to lead an organization, because it sounds like a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And what you will discover later on is that you've just burnt up a lot of time and energy. It does not amount to something that brings result.
Mm-hmm.
So the concern here is that your activity and your use of your time should bring result. It should bring reward. It should produce benefit and fruitfulness, not only in your life, but the life of others. So that's where we talked about making the tough call recently, last week, of course. So when you're asked to become involved in activity or in a project or meetings, then you can't say no to some of these requests because it just burns up a lot of energy. Do you measure how busy you are and how productive you are each day? And if you understand that and you come to an understanding and appreciation that this activity does not gain any benefit either to myself or to the others that I thought they would, then you determine that they will no longer exist for you. And it may be a good activity for others, but in terms of your own goals and the results you want to accomplish.
That's what I'm thinking. In order to measure the value of your time, there must be a purpose that you're working towards, so that you know how far am I along my purpose, for us to know how I should value my time. So then we must establish, or there must be an established objective or purpose. Would you agree?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. So number 6, understand the value of planning. So um, unless there is serious planning about your time and how it's going to be used, you discover what work is to be done, how it is to be done, when it is to be done, where it is to be done, and how fast it can be done. So these are guides for you, so it is not done haphazardly. What work needs to be done? So there's a description of what is really you want to accomplish. What is the work? What is the nature of the work that you're going to be involved in? And the methods, how it is going to be done. If you don't have a clue, then you probably just, as we would say, spending top in mud, because you don't have a sense of how to do this particular task. And when it's going to be done. Do you have a time frame? Or is it something open-ended? It could be done anytime. Where it is to be done. So you have a specific space, location, and how fast. When is the deadline for this to be done? So you're working toward a particular goal in terms of how the time is being utilized in your life. So you're not waiting until you've added 2, 3, 4, 5 years to your life to accomplish this particular goal. So there are timelines. And one of the interesting exercises that you will find is that you look at your timeline for your life from birth to where you are, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 or more. And what they recommend for you is divide up your timeline into years, 5-year spans. So what was life for you between 1 and 5? Basically, you're at home, you're a child, you're basically having fun, you're growing up as an infant, and then 6 to 10, you're basically in primary school and so forth. And later on in life, you look at the next 5 years. So at this particular juncture of each person's life, what has happened in your life over the last 5 years? And what is you want to accomplish in the next 5 years of your life? The 5 year spans go by very quickly.
Yeah.
We think that 5 years is, down the road, only to discover that the pandemic took 2 years of that 5 years,
Yeah.
and it has just gone so quickly.
So quickly.
So planning is going to be critical in terms of how do you accomplish the goals and objectives that you've set out for yourself, for your organization, for your denomination, if you're involved in church, in your leadership role in a company. What is the objective that we're seeking to accomplish in this organization
Mhm.
over the next 5 years, 10 years, long-term, medium range goal? And if we do not set those parameters and years behind them and time frame, it will go by so quickly. And so stay on your agenda. Okay. It is so easy to allow others to set your agenda. If you do not have one, others will create one for you.
Mhm.
Yes. Top leaders must work to keep the main thing. You must help your team focus on the right agenda and not get sidetracked. So the question is not will your calendar be full, but rather who will fill your calendar? So the discipline of having your calendar is that it allows you to accomplish the things that are assigned on your calendar.
Yeah.
If you have an empty calendar, and
Mhm.
others will fill it up for you, because question is, what do you want to fill your calendar with? And then keep responsibility where it belongs. When you do something for someone else that they should do for themselves, we let them do something to us no one should do. Steal our time and energy. Keep these items in mind. Decisions should be made at the lowest level possible. So you involve everyone at the ground level. Don't allow staff to bring you problems without bringing possible solutions. So staff and members tend to approach a leader that way. These are the problems, and they would present every possible problem. And they in themselves do not perceive a solution. Empower others by believing they can keep commitments without being rescued. Follow the 80-20 rule of responsibilities. Let others do the first 80%. You finish the final 20% of the project. Because the Pareto rules, as you know, says 20% of the people do 80% of the work. And that's why very often the smaller percentage of people have additional work to do. Assess your energy and temperament. How much stress can I handle? So you do not take on more than you can handle.
Before we go on to that point, Reverend, in a little earlier you mentioned about your calendar being full. The question is not will your calendar be full, but rather what will fill your calendar. There might be listeners who at this point in their life, they're probably at the 11 o'clock hour. They're probably they're probably 20, 25, 30, and they haven't decided what they want to do with their life yet. They probably don't even have a calendar. Could you just give them an advice of how to, get a calendar or find purpose or to manage their time along those lines?
Good. So as younger people, it's good to look at the information that is available and possible. And it is always good to have someone with an experience of teaching about managing time and self-management, and seek advice. There's nothing wrong in asking for help in terms of your sense the need to get some specific direction as a younger person, even as a middle-aged older person. and you want to get a particular program for your own life and reach a particular destination with your thinking and planning, it's advisable to seek out help from, and help is available. I mean, there's so many resources available to us. And then you have sit down with somebody that is experienced in those fields and that they could coach you, as it were, become a coach to you, a guide, a director. And so you could avoid the pitfalls of older folks who have not done that and have a more productive life, rather than looking back in some state of regretfulness and thinking, I wish I had done that at this particular age. But with all the resources available, there are no excuses for everyone getting the help they need to get this particular issue, fixed if they have an issue with it. We've all run into people that seem to have a perennial problem with turning up late to. It doesn't matter where or what activity. You know that this particular person is not going to be there on time. Now that's an inherent issue, and that person would need some intervention. Otherwise, they tend to lose the respect of others. In terms, especially if they lead a group of people. As a matter of fact, not many people would follow you if they think that you're wasting their time.
Yeah.
So again, there's the need to seek help, to get the support, the advice, the wisdom from others who have gone down that path, and to do the diligence of seeking information, because it's available.
Yeah.
It's available there with so much on the web and elsewhere. Assess your energy and temperament. How much stress can you handle? How much downtime do I require? Some of us need more hours downtime than others. How many hours can I spend each day working, being with people, being creative? So you would know when is your peak hours for work. Some are what we call the late nighters. They can stay up till midnight, 1 o'clock, and over that, and they have that high energy at that hour. Others have a high energy level at early hours in the morning. They could get about and get busy even at that early hour in the morning. But by 8 o'clock in the evening, they're done. And so you have to determine what are your peak hours of performance, and you understand yourself. And so the advice is to do the most difficult task at the highest level of energy. When your energy is at the peak, you take on the most difficult task. You do not want to handle issues of discrepancies and conflicts when your energy is draining. You do not make the best decisions when you're tired and worn. So do you understand your temperament? We talked a lot about that in one discussion, understanding your personality, your temperament, and do you recognize your energy level? So there are two things combined here, your temperament, understand how you function, what is your dominant personality trait, and what are your peaks of energy, your highest peak time and energy level, so that you can function creatively.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here on another session of Leadership Plus. It's so good that you can join us as we discuss under the topic, the leader's time, Tock, manage the clock. And we have been looking at, the basic facts on time management, that we all have it and that we must use it wisely. And we've been going through some timely advice about time. And there's an interesting scale that, points out that if you're in your 20s, it's like 11:08 a.m. If you're in your 25, if you're about 25, it's about 12:25 p.m. If you're 30, it's about 1:25 p.m. If you're 35, it's about 2:59 p.m. If you're 40, it's 4:16 in the evening time. If you're 45, it's like 5:43 p.m. If you're 50, it's like 6:50 in the evening. If you're 55, it's like 8:08 p.m. And if you're 60, it's like 10:11 p.m. And if you're 70, friends, it's approaching midnight. So we're all somewhere on that scale there. I wouldn't say mine, and but we have to be very skillful and wise about our time because we have a measured amount, and we got to use it wisely. And right now, Reverend John is taking us through some timely advice to manage our time. So we're at number 6, I believe, or 7.
Now we are moving fast this evening, I think.
Yes.
So number 8
Number
and
8, that's
9, keep responsibility where it belongs.
yes.
And then we talked about assess your energy and temperament,
Right.
and understand how you function as an individual.
Right. So we're at number
And
10.
if you're going to be writing a book or preparing a lecture, of course, the best time is when you're at your peak level in terms of your energy, so that you can concentrate and focus on getting your thoughts out there in a very creative way. Then develop a system, regular tasks, and simplify everything. So what kind of system are you using to help you regulate your time? Of course, there is a calendar on your phones, on your tablets. I mean, it's right at your fingertips now, so you could lay out your system in that particular way. And you get reminders, practically for everything that you put into the calendar. If you are supposed to be on a Zoom call, it gives you perhaps a 15-minute reminder if you have an appointment. So set up your system if you haven't done that as yet, so that you do not forget the important appointments that you should keep, or an activity that you should be present at. As a matter of fact, if you're leading the activity and you forget it completely, you're in big trouble. So just have those, create the most important effective system. When you implement the system, production will likely go up 30%. That is the research, that if you implement a system, you will find that you are more productive, up and above 30%. Yeah. There's some practical things here about the systems that can help us get more done in a shorter period of time. Let's look at some practical examples. For example, so you would set up your to-do list, as it were, your list of activity for the day. But then also, in addition to doing that, you would assign the venue for these activities, or the location. So for example, we would have a to-do list of several things, perhaps in the same location. And using perhaps Grenada as an example, you're going into the town of St. George, and you're supposed to probably go to the supermarket. You're going to perhaps pay bills at different locations. And what you find, and what I've experienced with people I've worked with, they understand that they have all these stops, as it were, and these places that are located in a general area, and they are not written down. They are not put anywhere on a list to do, or they are not itemized in terms of priorities, only to discover that, I have been right there next door to this other place that we should have done this task, the banking, for example. And then we have returned back to perhaps an office where we work, because we have limited time that we could be out on doing errands, as it were, accomplishing tasks. Only to discover that if we had written down a place, a time, and the activity that should be accomplished, we do not have to leave and go back the next day, as it were, to do the same task, a similar task that could have been accomplished. So it's just some practical things and so that's why some folks can get much more done in the same amount of time than others. And that we go back to the whole concept of understanding the value of planning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So plan your day, plan the activity for the week if possible. Um, if you fail to plan, so says the saying, you have actually planned to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So develop systems that appropriate for your own life. There are some standard things that you have to accomplish, but what takes over the time is those unplanned activity.
True. So
And
getting some
then
of those tasks done, I think it goes back to something we would have discussed, I think, in the week before. I'm thinking, it goes back to thinking and planning, thinking. It goes hand in hand so that you don't waste time. Mm-hmm.
then do the project right the first time. So that means that you're going to be thinking through this project carefully, so you do not have to repeat it several times. This is why, as they said, if you don't have the time to do it right, when you will have the time to do it over. Once you decide an activity is a priority, invest the time to follow through, to do it well.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you do in word or in deed, do all to the name of the Lord. So there's a sense of excellence
Yeah.
that should characterize your life. So when someone looks at your work, there's a stamp of excellence placed upon it. It is not done haphazardly. It is not taken for granted.
Mm.
And that's why some students will get an A for their work and some will get a C on an assignment um, because of the diligence that they put into a particular work. Place deadline on yourself. So it is not open. It's not open-ended. Um, People who procrastinate are interruption prone. They welcome interruptions and use them as an excuse. Deadlines are the cure for delay and indecision. So there has to be a careful balance about what and who you allow to interrupt you as well.
Yeah.
And so that's why generally you would have um, windows for appointments. So people just do not barge into your space and time and waste time because they do not have any time they do not have any important things to do. And so you have to be gentle about how you say to someone, sorry, I cannot see you at this particular time. Can you come back at this other time that is more convenient? So deadlines for um, your personal life. What do you want to accomplish at the end of next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? You set those deadlines. Sometimes we hit it right on target. Sometimes we do it even before the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
But unless you set those markers, um, nothing really happens because time just roll on. Time doesn't wait for anyone. And then there's an important one here. Delegate wisely. So you don't have to do everything on your own. We talked about that. What are your strengths and priorities? What are the strengths of your team members? What exactly tasks can be done? So this is having a team around you as well and helping to accomplish a particular task or project. When you give responsibility away, you tend to take them back. So the challenge of delegating responsibility sometimes is that we sense that that person may not do it as well as you could, and the temptation is to go back and take back the responsibility, but that doesn't allow the person to grow and allow them, of course, to make mistakes as we have all done. So these are some guidelines, some specific and definite guidelines that if we follow them, we will see a 30% increase in our productivity
Mhm.
And that's quite a jump from where we may be at this time
Yeah.
in terms of how do you proceed with managing yourself and managing your life, as it were. So being time conscious um, about, this is a particular hour of the day, and it would take you, in practical sense, if you're traveling, for example, to get to a particular destination, there's a certain calculation of how long it should take you normally to get from A to B, and also have some buffer in that time in case of something that pops up in your journey, maybe an accident, or and if you have packed it so tightly that there's no room for error, then you're going to be late to get to your next appointment or destination. So put some buffer in there. I would recommend that if you were um, responsible for an activity or project, um, a good rule of thumb is, at least a 30 minutes in addition to the time that it would take you normally to get there. So if there is it gives you an opportunity to make up back some time on your travel, as it were. So those are details. Sometimes we know we have to get to a particular function or event, and especially if you're responsible for it, to get it started on time. Um, so you make good use of what is going to take you, and that's just some practical things. If you're preparing for an exam, how many hours you need to commit to the study so that you can prepare well and have a good result. Um, if you're preparing for a meeting, a convention, you're preparing for a presentation, how much time it's going to take you to prepare. And one of the challenges, and we talk about people's intrusion of your time and sometimes demands made upon you as a leader, is when you have people who have not thought through their own planning for events and activities, and just remember that, oh, this is next week and we haven't asked anyone yet, a resource person.
Mhm.
And so out of their lack of planning, as we talked about, they give you a call and ask for you, and it is just that it's impossible unless you really um, cannot manage your time well, that you could respond positively to those kind of requests. So it is really, how do you gently say no to some invitations, especially last minute when, of course, if there's a crisis, you try to pitch in and help. But says in the Bible, if the ox falls into the ditch every Saturday, you either kill the ox or you fill up the hole in which the ox is fallen into. So
Yeah.
these are some very practical guidelines for us today. Planning, stay on your agenda, know your strengths at the high peak energy level, getting your things done right in the first instance so you don't have to go and repeat it, the same activity, and go over many times, and then delegate things that others can do well. So you're not bogged down with things that others can do better, and develop systems as how you can get um, reminders and planners, daily planning, and it's all on the gadgets now. We don't write anything down anymore, hardly.
Yeah.
But how do you develop those things? Those are some clearly defined guidelines, um, advice, timely advice, as I said about time.
Mhm. When you look at the scripture and you see the life, of Jesus being the best exemplar, you see how focused he was. He was clear on what he came to do, who he is, what is to be done. And when you read scripture, you see, that everything was done in a timely manner, and when it was all finished and it was all fulfilled, he said, it is finished. So, it helps us to see that, we have to have a purpose, know our purpose, be focused, and understand, when things come along, what is wasting my time? Should I be doing this? Should I take this appointment? Should I not take this appointment? And understand that we're given time on earth. We don't have forever. I mean, a lot of us would like to be here for hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, it's amazing when you read that some of these guys live for thousands of years, it's like, wow. I wonder if I want to live that long. Thousands. Yes, I think I do. But we have a measured time and we have to make good use of it. There's a comment here saying it's about my midnight for me. I'm saying like Moses, Lord, teach me to number my days that I may apply my heart unto wisdom. And I think, some of those of you who may be at your midnight or close to the, is it approaching
17,
midnight?
yeah.
Yes,
It's
approaching
17,
midnight. Yeah. The scripture does say bringing forth. What about that scripture? I'm trying to remember. I don't remember it clearly now. Bearing fruit in old age.
Oh, sure.
Yes, you can still plan and do something. Don't give up or sit down and expire, but you still can plan and do something for the kingdom of God. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that has been our session for today. Any final words before we end today's session?
Great. So how to steward time and manage opportunities is the focus of our discussion today. And if we take into these basic facts on time management, we can improve on how do we value the time. So we put greater value on the time given to us, that we do not take the time given to us for granted, but that we utilize the time and specialize in particular fields where God has placed you. And so you're not, as we would say, it's a square peg fitting into a round hole, or vice versa. But you're in a particular place in time of your life and the destination you want to get to, so that these principles can help us accomplish those things. Of course, God gives to us particular seasons and times and length of time, and you want to maximize that time and the years that He has given you, so that there is great fulfillment, and you have made a significant contribution and to the world in which God has placed you. And of course, we understand that we are vice regents. We are to manage what God has given to us, and to fulfill the purpose to which He has created us. And that means that has a discipline attached to it, and one of those great disciplines is managing the time.
Yes, indeed. We all have been given time and we have to manage it well. We don't want to squander it. I don't think we can go to Real Value and buy it. No, we have it. And as we have it in hand, we have to make excellent use of our time here on earth. Again, thank you, Reverend John, for sharing today's information with us. We appreciate it. And I pray that, listeners, that we do take these things to heart and plan, think, organize, strategize, focus, and ensure we make good use of our time here on earth. So this has been our session for Leadership Plus on this 23rd day of February 2022. And we do look forward to seeing you next Wednesday right here, same time at 5 p.m. time. Enjoy your afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
God bless you.
Want to show His excellence. All I